those things that were wicked, misguided, and distorted. These were the sins that ruled in the days of Judah. It's up to us to understand today, people of God, before we go forward, we must understand where we came from. We must understand the importance of Jeremiah's life. God called him for a specific purpose. There was something that was already in Jeremiah before he was formed in his mother's womb. There was a specific assignment that was put on Jeremiah's life. So I want to talk to the young people today because what God is yet doing in your life, he's setting you up for something great. He's setting you up for something specific. There is leadership capabilities. There's leadership qualities in you that God sees in you. And so therefore, when God calls you, you must position yourself. You must be in the right place at the right time. So we got to understand here that Jeremiah was at a right young age. And God called him for a specific purpose to do a work for him. Now, we have to understand that these were the sins that ruled in the days of Judah. And so Jeremiah, he began to lament. He began to weep for the people. That's why they called him the weeping prophet. He began to express grief and compassion for the people. Even with all this drama going on in his life, God, he still decides to call Jeremiah. God still decides to prepare him and give him all that he needed to fulfill the work of the ministry. So Jeremiah began to boldly undertake the undesirable task. He boldly takes and proclaims God's judgment upon an unrepentant nation. Again, we have to understand where we're going, because we have to understand the work and the assignment that God put on Jeremiah's life. This was an unpopular message. This unpopular call, it brought him sorrow of opposition. It brought him imprisonment and excommunication from the temple, and it also called for him to get beat. I want to put a footnote there. When God begins to call you for a certain purpose, sometimes there's some things that you have to go through in order to accomplish what God has for you. Oh, come on, somebody talk back to me. Here, this was an unpopular call, which brought Jeremiah sorrow. It brought him opposition. It even brought him imprisonment. He was locked up in jail. He was excommunicated from the temple, and they beat him. But through it all, Jeremiah was determined to carry out the call of duty for his life. We have to understand that this was a calling that was already predestined to happen. It was ordained by God and for God before the foundation of the world. This was no surprise to God, but it was a moment where Jeremiah had to accept that his life was not ordinary. How many of you understand and know that your life is not ordinary? When God calls you for a certain purpose, he's calling you out of something to take you into something better. This calling was predestined for Jeremiah. He had to accept that his life was not ordinary. Jeremiah, because he was a young man, he couldn't do as other teenagers did. Because he was a peculiar young man. He was different. He couldn't fit in, even though he was in the world. He was not of the world. Somebody help me here today. But there was a specific call of duty that was to be carried out in Jeremiah's life. And this specific word, it came from God. This specific came from God to the prophet Jeremiah at the right time. It came at the right season in his life. And this is where the scripture records in the first chapter of Jeremiah, what we just read, where the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah saying, before, somebody shout before. He said, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. He says, I appoint you as a prophet to the nation. God said that you must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. It goes on to say, God told Jeremiah, do not be afraid, for I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord. I don't know about you, but even before the foundation of the world, God knew what your assignment would be. He said, before I formed you, there was a specific assignment that was attached to your life. And God said, until you give me a yes, you cannot fulfill the purpose that I have given you. So you have to understand, people of God, that here we see that Jeremiah was petitioned by God because Jeremiah had a great work to do for him. So here this morning, I want to announce to this young generation, I want to look at you specifically this morning. I want to tell you that you are in